Welcome to Freaked Out with your host, Liz. It's good to see you guys again. I know we were just here not too long ago, and I did have plans, but my plans always get ruined. But not because of bad things, but because other things just keep happening and we got to talk about them and stay current, right? Anyways, I decided to watch the JonBenét documentary that came out on Netflix yesterday. So if you have not watched it, I highly recommend doing so. But if you don't want to watch it, I'll cover what was going on over there with my own predictions and details. From the sounds of the documentary, though, it seemed as though they were very much about showing both sides of it. And I can understand why. But we're going to talk about it in a much bigger way here. If you have not listened to the Jonbenet Ramsey episodes that we did on the podcast, highly recommend going and taking a listen. We covered it twice. Now, the first episode that we did, oh my gosh, can I just express how irritated I was? So, Jonbenet and I didn't speak much during the channeling, which I really don't understand why it happened that way, but it just did. It was more Patsy and I communicating. And Patsy had made it, and a little bit of Jonbenet, to really emphasize Burke's innocence in all this. So much so that it started to make me second guess what they were telling me. And then one day, I was just kind of idly sitting by, and I heard Jonbenet's voice in my mind because I had just completed the Harmony Montgomery case, and Harmony and Jonbenet and Kaylee Anthony, all very, very popular spirits, were kind of hanging out. And I think Jonbenet was kind of afraid to communicate a lot of what was reality. So Harmony had told me that she wanted to talk, which I was like, yeah, of course, no problem. I was the doll lady. Every time I had a child come in my possession, I would often offer them a toy to make it an easier transition to communicate with them. So we put on this Law and Order episode, and it is a cover-up of a husband and a wife, and they had a child. They had 2 children. And ultimately, the son had killed the child, and the parents or father had just covered it up. And that is exactly what I was being told. So I decided to reevaluate the episode entirely, which I have never done before. And it upset me because I feel like I had been had by Patsy. You know what I mean? Anyways, there were a lot of details that came out in this documentary that I wanted to talk about. So we're going to go through it right now. And if you guys are not subscribed, please do so. Follow us. Hit the notification button as well so that you get notified every time we drop an episode, because you guys have no idea. I am not focusing as much as I was on TikTok because TikTok is not allowing certain things to be posted anymore. So I want to give you guys my full energy. I want to be able to speak freely about things too. So I am excited to share all these details here with you. And we also have another surprise on the membership side coming on Thanksgiving. From me and somebody else. I'll have a special guest with me. If you guys want to guess in the comments, please drop them in the comments because I would love to see your guesses. In the last podcast I had done, I had given the benefit of the doubt to Burke. I had seen that it could have potentially been an accident. But as I sit here today with you guys, I am reevaluating that. And again, I feel like the family just keeps getting me. I believe that he did do it intentionally. Perhaps maybe killing her was not intentional, but what he did was intentional. And of course, we know that Patsy had died at the age of 49 with another bout of cancer, this time being ovarian cancer. John tried to suggest that Patsy wanted to survive it, but I don't believe that to be the case. If anything, she may have been pulling the wool over his eyes as well. I believe that she wanted to go. I see it. She wanted to be with her child, so she wasn't going to fight as heavily as she had in the past. Now, the documentary starts off with John Ramsey talking about how he was shaving and basically getting ready for the day. They were actually preparing to do like another family Christmas, and they were heading out. Now, when it comes to Patsy, we have to take the videos of her from the past since she's been gone a while. And she had suggested that as she was going down the stairs, which by the way, those stairs were a spiral staircase, she had seen this ransom letter. Now, instantly, as I was watching this video of Patsy, she looked like she was heavily medicated, which I can understand. You just lost your child. It makes sense. But I feel as though she was slurring a lot of her words, and I think it was to keep her fairly calm and also to not give away too much information. I believe that that was intentionally done, and I think she was over-medicated that day, to be honest. They started to reread the letter on the documentary, and I kept hearing the word that stuck out heavily was your daughter, your daughter, your daughter. Very cold, didn't mention her name. I'm going to assume that that was because if they wrote out JonBenét, because they were so used to writing it, it would be something to easily detect in the writing. You know what I mean? They could have easily detected if it was mom, dad, you name it. They were trying to officially make it not personal. They wanted to make it seem like this person was way outside of the home. It's conflicting because they keep suggesting certain people, which we'll talk about a little later, to kind of make it seem like they were also involved in killing her. The other thing that I had noticed that I had never seen before was Burke in his interview. He was sitting on the chair in a very relaxed position, legs over the side, totally withdrawn from the conversation. It looked as though he was more irritated than anything else. I know for me, yeah, okay, maybe me and my siblings, obviously, we didn't all get along when we were kids. But if my brother had passed away, I would be devastated. I would be having a hell of a hard time talking about it. But he looks very lackadaisy, like nothing's even bothering him. If anything, he just reminded me even more of a sociopath. Now, going into the object that was used to strangle JonBenét, it takes somebody with skill to be able to make a knot the way they did around the paintbrush. I believe that John taught his child on how to do that. I believe that he was also associated with perhaps maybe scouting or something along those lines, but he knew what he was doing. I also believe that Burke had a lot of influence from like video games, TV. He was one of those kids that couldn't just watch. He had to watch and then reenact. And I believe that he watched a lot of things that were violent. And I believe that is why he came up with this makeshift strangling device to hurt his sister. I believe that it was malicious versus the other two, JonBenét and Patsy, both suggest to me that it was accidental. I just can't put the two and two together. How do you accidentally strangle somebody? I can see if they were playing around and he had put a pillow over her head and she had suffocated in that way, okay, maybe. But I don't feel as though this particular strangulation and the blow to her head was not done purposely. And the two of them wanted me to make damn sure that I had said that. And for me, I did. And reevaluating, I don't feel that way anymore. There was just something about Burke that I feel like it's totally black. There's no soul there behind his eyes. I also believe that Burke has his family fooled. I feel like he just would say, Mommy, I didn't know, and I didn't do this on purpose, and I didn't hurt JonBenét. I didn't mean to. Like, he would play a lot of those games. And because that's their child and they love him, they're going to assume that it was all accidental. When I think at one point in time, both of them questioned that. Big question that people keep asking was, who wrote the ransom note? Before all of this transpired, I know they were not stupid. They looked for that child in that home before she was found. Burke had confessed to what had happened, and I believe a plan then ensued, including the friends that came over later. I believe that those two friends that were there whilst waiting for this person to call them on this ransom note, that these two individuals had come over prior to the call out to the police. I also believe that they were the one who suggested a ransom note. And I believe that Patsy was actually writing it up first, which is why I believe there was other scribbles on the piece of paper. But I don't believe she did it. And I think that the male did it. The writing seemed to look very masculine. I also believe that she was informed by a lawyer too on what to do. Like, I see that this person had a lawyer friend, or the person himself was a lawyer. This guy knew how to get away with murder, basically. I even believe that there might have even been another letter that was originally written on another piece of paper by the female friend with Patsy, but I'm also feeling as though that was disregarded and thrown away, perhaps even like lit on fire at some point. So people keep asking me if the first strangulation or the blow to the head was in fact murder. I believe the blow to her head was done secondary, that the strangulation happened first. She was laying down. They were having an argument. There was some sort of sexual interaction, but I don't believe that she allowed it to get to that point. She was like, "What are you doing? Don't do that. That hurts." And I think that's when he got aggressive with her. I believe she was going to tell on him or tattle on him or something. And I believe that's when he decided to strangle her. I think he was trying to silence her, and he didn't realize to the capacity of what he was doing. He's hurt her in the past. Like, he's pushed her, he's pinched her, he's hit her. Like, he's done some shit to her because she's his annoying little sister. And I feel like that really messed with him quite a bit too. She was getting all the attention. He was not. It was always good job to her, and to him it was always like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? So he was in constant competition with her. Was JonBenét sexually assaulted by anybody else, including John? So from what I gather, Burke did follow along on the sexual explicit things that he would see on television. And I do believe he did cross a line with her. I also don't believe that John at all sexually assaulted his daughter. I just don't get that vibe from him whatsoever. The other thing that I found interesting about this documentary is that they showed us the layout of the home a little bit better, which the parents were all the way on the third floor. They had turned that room into their bedroom. And then underneath them was obviously a few other floors, and all the way in the basement, they would not have been able to hear anything. Now, the room that the kids were in were called the train room. And that particular room had Burke's stuff, including a train set and train related items. I believe that he got his sister out of bed. They wanted to play, like they got new toys. They just wanted to hang out, do their thing. And I think that's exactly what happened. Burke called his sister to come and hang out with him, and they headed down the stairs. They knew that mom and dad would be up soon, but they were just kind of hanging out before that happened. I also don't feel like Burke was ever comfortable going down to the basement by himself, so he needed his sister as just that extra person there because he had some fear of it. I do believe that he was trying to experiment with this brush, do the things that he was seeing and hearing about when it comes to sex. She really wasn't playing with any of his stuff. They were bickering before all of this transpired. More than sexual assault, he was more physically violent with her, pinching her, hitting her, biting her. She would often get hurt by him quite a bit, and the family have yet to ever share those details. And this was something that happened regularly. Everyone would talk about how cute and wonderful and talented she was, and he was just in the corner getting no kind of praise of any sorts of any kind, rolling his eyes, annoyed with it. In his mind, he kind of thought he did a favor to the whole family. We know that not to be true. Sadly, he would often torture her whenever he got the opportunity to do so. Now, when it comes to the pageants, was there some sort of cross correlation between the pageants and her murder? I mean, other than sexualizing her a little bit, I don't even feel as though Burke looked at her like that. I believe that he was just kind of following along. Yes, she definitely would dress up like an adult woman, but as you can see, a lot of people do that in the pageant world. And there are a lot of predators in pageantry. Don't get me wrong on that. And we will talk about that one day. But this particular case was not that. A lot of people focused on her sexualization, but I just believe that Patsy looked at it like she wanted her daughter to be the star of the show. I also keep seeing like Saved by the Bell, Kelly Kapowski, when she was very sexualized on that show. I believe that maybe Burke got some sort of impression from that show too. Now, did the police do their job, the best job that they could to try to solve this case? Here's the issue. When the police came to this crime scene, they were not under the impression that that child was in the house, nor did they look for her. They were under the impression that the child was taken out of the house, abducted. So they didn't look at this as a crime scene, and they should have. They were all waiting for someone to call. They thought it was a genuine ransom. They didn't think the parents had any sort of connection. Maybe one police officer thought there was a connection, but majority of them looked at John and John's family, very rich, and looked like the kids were taken care of, so they were rather confused. They didn't think that it would go in this direction, obviously. I believe that John was getting very, very antsy, so he got up and started walking around because he just couldn't handle it anymore. I see that he was the one who hid her body, if you will, to protect Burke. He had already lost one daughter. He just lost his second daughter. He didn't want to lose his son in the process, even his wife as well. So I believe that he knew that in that moment, it was going to be the time that he was going to go look for her. And that is exactly why he headed to the basement with his friend. And that's why he grabbed her. This is the most suspicious part of it for me. I believe that when he removed the duct tape from her mouth, there's a reason behind that. I believe that he was afraid his fingerprints would be on it. He was genuinely trying to stop the crime scene. He had to insert himself in that crime scene so that his DNA was also found because he was the one who set it up. I also believe that the friend and him had already made this plan to do this before the cops had come. I do believe that John was heartbroken, but I also believe that he was just simply trying to protect his child. It was definitely unusual that the friends were all there. Dishes were being washed. People were being taken care of. There was food everywhere. It was just not what you would consider to be a crime scene or even just a spot to wait for this person to give them the next instructions. The entire house was a crime scene and they should not have touched even one single dish. Were any of the cops involved in this? I don't believe that the cops were involved, but I do believe that the Ramseys have a big group of people around them, their church. They have a lot of people in high places financially that have given them a lot of advice throughout this. And from what I gather, some of the people on the police force had some sort of affiliation there too. I believe that one of the head honchos kind of stopped this from going any further, but I do believe that they could have collected enough evidence to get these two at least sent to jail at the very least. But I think that this cop just decided not to. I believe that the church was paid off to try to push the narrative that these two were innocent. They all believed it. They believed it because they are godly people. Why would godly people want to do this? I also find it extremely odd that the parents had isolated themselves from the police. I understand that there is an aspect of being told not to talk to them, and I get all that, but there were moments where they could have had some helpful information to help find the killer. But I believe that they hid because they had something to hide and they were afraid of what might slip up. I also believe that the CNN interview was also very unusual. They were trying to make themselves look innocent. There was somebody who had made a suggestion that a couple of days before she had been killed, she had a saxophone and it was like she was humping the saxophone. That is complete and utter bullshit. I don't feel that way. She was just playing her instrument. There's nothing along those lines that she was doing with that saxophone. I know, believe it or not, but people are going to probably argue with this point, but she really loved to perform. Like this part of it, she wanted to be on stage. Her mother didn't force her into it. Her mom introduced her to it, but she wanted to be the best of the best of the best. They also had insisted that because Elizabeth, his oldest daughter, had been killed in a car accident 5 years prior, that she was sexually abused by John. I don't believe that to be true either. And going back to Burke, his family were under the impression that he was innocent in all this and still think he's quite innocent. I see it very differently. I see somebody who is a cold-blooded killer that just so happened to get away with murder. There was also 2 marks on the back of her neck that some experts believe to be like a taser, but I believe that it was the actual markings of the train set tracks. There are little dots on that track and it works out because he was on top of her. I see that he was straddling her and those indentations could have been done because of that, which I believe is a huge red flag that that was associated with Burke. One detective looking at this case had seen a photo, one of the first photos taken, which was of her bedroom, and the detective said it looked like she had been pulled from her bed, but I know that he's got his heart in the right place. Like I don't see that he's a malicious person, but I believe that she scooted her bum off of that bed when Burke called to her. Instead of getting off from the side, she scooted over to him. There was a man, Gary Olivia, I believe his name was, who was found with photos of JonBenét, a creepy pedo, without a doubt, fantasizing about JonBenét, but he definitely did not do it. He's a creep, a pedophile, everything you can think of, but in this particular case, I don't feel as though he had officially done anything. Does he want to take credit for it? Hell yeah. He wanted his name on the map for whatever reason. There was also a photographer by the name of Simon Randall, who's associated with all of the pageantry. And there were creepers that come to pageants. And again, we're going to talk about pageants in a bigger way at some point. But I believe that with Simon, let's just put him in this position for a moment. If he were to do it, he would have A, kidnapped her, and B, he would have escaped with her. I don't believe that he would have just picked her up, killed her in the house, 300-word or more letter to the parents. It doesn't make sense to me. I also don't feel like he had the balls. He's somebody who kind of hides behind a lens. He's someone who's watching on the internet. You know, he's got a lot of those child pornography things. That's the vibe I get from him. I don't feel like he would actually physically go out and do something to that degree. Maybe over time he would progress to that point, but I don't feel it to be in this case. And then there was also somebody by the name of Daxis who was writing mysterious emails back and forth, even made a phone call suggesting that he killed JonBenét. He even had a secret name for a nanny or something. I believe that was someone associated with the Ramsey family, trying to take the family's scent off the case. I don't believe that that person was good in any way. Like, I feel like they were a very bad energy, but they didn't do it either. They were just trying to take away the heat from the family. that is everything that I specifically took away from that case. If there are any questions that you guys have in relation to this case, please drop them in the comment section because I'd really like to know. This is one of those cases that once I had finished doing the second installment of JonBenét, I was just like, oh brother, I don't want to do any more of this because the bullshit that's still going on even in the afterlife with it is crazy. We'll be back next week. Don't know what I'm dropping next week for the next episode, but if you guys have any suggestions, I'm willing to hear in the comment section. I hope you have a good day, a good holiday, happy Thanksgiving, and stay freaked out.